From the John DeVito Broadcast Center, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another broadcast of Armchair Experts with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network and Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich on Wednesday, February the 3rd, the year of our Lord, 2016. And now, here they are, in person, breathing on their own, Jim and Rich.
Waiting for Super Bowl Sunday. The pregame show is in its, ninth day? Something like that by now?
I just noticed it the first time yesterday. Was it on ESPN or one of the channels had, I don't know what they called it, Super Bowl Monday or whatever it was. And I thought, well, here we're really going to get a countdown here. So what do you think?
I remember they used to, years ago, like, when there weren't so many games, like the day before the game, they'd play the highlight film from like every game up to that. The NFL Films version of Super Bowl, all the Super Bowls.
I really didn't pay much attention because after the first, when I got to the let's see, when Super Bowl started, we were still in high school.
1967, right.
And then
the AFL NFL Championship.
AFL NFL Championship. And when we got older, and I would read the paper on a regular basis. The whole 2 weeks leading up. I mean, Chicago sports got crowded off the sports page. I got sick of reading all about whoever was in the Super Bowl because it was never usually the Bears, obviously. And you know what? I just got tired of the build-up. So I'm actually glad that they've super cut back on the coverage, at least paper-wise, because that's usually one of my biggest sources of information.
Print media is not going to, just print media is shrunk compared to when we were kids. Now it's all broadcast media.
Yeah.
And tonight, when I was driving here tonight, there is going to be a show on CBS, the 50 greatest Super Bowl commercials of all time. And you get to vote for the top two. You get to decide who the winners are. I know you'll be sitting by your TV.
That just shows how how desperate they are to fill up space on TV and whatever else.
Well, it's CBS's year. It's CBS's year for it. It's the 50th anniversary. Mm-hmm. So all the extra hype for it. It's going to get down to the game. I hope the game meets the hype.
Well, what there is something that really, really aggravates me about the Super Bowl, though, and about the NFL, and it is like everything that happened championship-wise prior to 1967 is totally forgotten.
It's forgotten.
And there was, I'm not sure if it was exactly 47 years or 46, whatever the number would be, of championships, because in the beginning of the league, that was a sort of a fluid system that they had. It wasn't always the same. But
the first formal championship game, I think, was 33.
33, okay.
With the Bears and the Giants.
Yeah.
I think that was they finally, although they had that one the year before that wound up having to be in the stadium.
Oh, that was that the Bears in Portsmouth?
Portsmouth.
Portsmouth,
yeah.
Spartans, maybe?
Yeah.
I think that's the forerunner of the Lions, possibly.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah. I think that was the game that wound up having to be played in the Chicago Stadium because the weather was so horrible.
Yeah,
the 80-yard field.
And I have read things where they say that everybody says it was an 80-yard field, but there are people who say it was more like a 60-yard field. And
it's very possible. That's very possible. You go look at the way they lay out a game for arena football. It's a 50-yard field.
Yeah.
Plus your end zones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you. So many people have. Almost everybody I talk to says, "Well, Carolina," and I was talking to somebody last night, Elias, at the library, and I said, he said, "Yeah, I'm going to watch the game casually." I said, "Well, who do you think?" He said, I think the Panthers. And I said, what really gives me pause is that, I'm not going to say every time, but numerous times when a team has been so dominant. They fall a lot of times they fall flat on their face.
Very true. Very true.
I mean, the going back to the third Super Bowl with the Jets and the Colts. The Colts were heavily favored.
Right.
And just recently the Giants and the Patriots.
Patriots
trying to complete an undefeated season.
Sure.
And I want to say that 2 years ago, going into the Super Bowl between Seattle and Denver, that a lot of people were saying Denver should be the favorite. Then they got smacked,
and they got clobbered.
Now there's always the other side of the coin. The Bears were heavily favored, and they came through and won handily against the Patriots.
Yes, but when New England scored first, everybody in Chicago went, "Uh-oh."
Yeah, that's true. Everybody did.
Everybody sat there and went, "Uh-oh."
Well,
we're in trouble.
I keep telling people, not that Cam Newton is not a great talent, but I'm not totally sold on him as every time somebody comes along and does well, and they're a little bit different. They were saying similar things, I think, a few years ago about Colin Kaepernick.
Right.
How are you going to contain him? He runs,
Right.
Very well. And
Right.
He passes well. Well, I guess they contained him to the point where he lost his job.
He lost his job. RG3 was going to be the next great thing until who was the coach there then? Shanahan.
Right.
Overused him. Mm-hmm. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if he's going to be Romo's backup next year in Dallas.
Oh, well, I hadn't heard that.
Then that's one of the rumors that he's gonna wind up. Plastic Face is going to wind up signing him, and Romo. What is he? 36, 37? With all
Tony Romo, I don't know.
With all the injuries, who knows how much more time he has?
Yeah.
Maybe rebuild his career down there.
Well, see, the thing I never understood is the way I sort of understood the RG3 story is that his first year he was doing well, he got hurt, and it wasn't just the coach's decision, but he insisted that he wanted to keep on playing.
Yeah, that's true.
So then there was, when he further injured himself, there was more criticism probably of the coach than of him. But he was the type of guy that my take on him was he wanted to show everybody that he was a gamer, that he could do it. Even when he was injured, he was going to, suck it up and play, which is an admirable thing.
Nice
now
trait.
This whole thing has been blown into something else. And, when who's the new coach? Gruden came in. That now it became sort of a personality clash between RG3 and Gruden. And now it's become a thing where, well, he's an arrogant guy. I'm talking about Griffin, RG3 now, and he's this and he's that. Well, to me, it all started from a guy who actually wanted to do what everybody claims they want players to do.
Yeah, suck it up and play
Suck
through
it up and play.
Play through everything.
So I guess to make a long story shorter, I think that RG3 can still be a good quarterback in the league. I sort of liked him before, still sort of like him.
Mm-hmm. I still think he can. I still think he can. I think if he gets himself in the right system and handled by the right coach, I think he's still salvageable.
Yeah, I think no question about it. As
I
long
think
as he's healthy, I think.
As long as he's healthy. I don't know if we'll have to see what Chip Kelly can do with Colin Kaepernick. And I don't know if Johnny Manziel is ever going to have a career.
Well, I was just glad when the Niners signed Chip Kelly and we got to keep Vic Fangio.
Yeah.
Because I was worried that both of our coordinators would get gobbled up. And
I was afraid
now
of that.
that's out the door.
I was afraid of that, too. Who do you like Sunday? You're still sticking with Carolina?
No, I'm sticking. I'm going to go Denver.
Denver.
I just think somehow, I like Jim. I like a team who, dominant teams are fine if they can continue with that dominance.
Yeah.
But I like a team who finds a way to get it done, and I think Denver has shown that they're that type of team.
I agree with you on that. I mean, I looked at this, and at the beginning, sometime last week, I looked at this and went to one of my favorite sites, and I see Denver's was getting 5 or 5.5, so I had to do that. Mm-hmm. On the money line, I did take Carolina on a straight-up bet, and I took the over.
Mm-hmm.
So let's
Took
see.
the over. What is the over and under?
45. I looked, and I think it's the same here. 45. So, I think Denver's defense is a key here.
It's the biggest thing in the game.
Yeah.
The Denver defense, how
Yeah.
they do is going to be, and more to the point, it's I believe how they start off the game will be huge.
Yeah.
because Denver is not going to be able to get into a scoring duel with Panthers and come out on top.
Yeah, I think there's going to be, I think you're probably, I think a lot of people are looking at this being Peyton Manning's last game.
Yeah, that's what they keep saying.
And I think he's kind of hinting around at it too, but who knows?
Now, I have to say this in Cam. I said that Cam Newton hasn't sold me, but I have to say in Cam Newton's defense, though, I can remember beginning of the year, some of the sports writers were, oh, poor Cam, we lost this guy, or not we, but the Panthers lost this guy, they lost that guy. What the heck are they going to do? And all they did was dominate everybody. So, and part of that is because Cam Newton performed really well.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I just think sometimes when you're flying high, sometimes somebody's going to bring you back to earth.
Eventually, it's going to happen. So let's see. Let's see.
It'll be fun to watch.
It's a great story on both sides because you've got Manning with his great career, might be his last game. You've got the Chicago connection on the other side with
Right.
Ron Rivera.
Yeah.
Even though Peanut isn't going to be playing, it's going to give him an opportunity to maybe get a Super Bowl ring.
Greg Olson.
Greg
Been
Olson.
big for that team.
Sure.
More and more people that you run into with Carolina becoming more and more high profile, getting to the Super Bowl, are saying, why the heck did they ever give Greg Olson basically away? I mean, I never could understand it. I always heard that he wasn't a good blocker or whatever. But I said, you know what, tight end is, you know what, when on the running downs, you can bring in guys who can block if you want.
That was the Martz. That was the Martz offense.
Yeah.
And the Martz offense did not have a tight end as a receiver. A tight end was supposed to be a blocker.
Yeah. Now, speaking of Mike Martz, did you see yesterday where he said he was a little PO'd because Terrell Owens is a finalist for the Hall of Fame this year? And I thought he made a great point. He said two of his guys, Isaac Bruce and Torrey Holt, should be in the conversation. And he said, for the life of him, a guy who obviously put up big numbers, but his team never really, really reached the promised land, why is he getting so much consideration over guys who's, in this case, his guys who also had good numbers,
Good
but
numbers
teams succeeded? Why is he getting so much play over those two guys?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, T.O. was always a good self-promoter, so he probably...
And the other guys were never. That way.
I mean, you didn't hear anything about
Nobody-
those guys
Torrey
other
Holt.
than they played football.
Right, that was it. And, part of that couple of years with the greatest show on turf,
Yeah, greatest show on turf, right?
Yeah. And it really was. I mean, I think
Fun to watch.
They were fun to watch, and I mean, geez, think back to other teams in St. Louis, Air Coryell.
Yeah. Well, Jim, that brings the point of, regardless of what these sports are, it's all, I don't know, I guess you would say cyclical, or maybe it's not even cyclical. It's that some of these things were here. The leagues took another, okay, we're talking about football. The league, you talked about Air Coryell. Air Coryell put the ball in the air, obviously. That's why they were Air Coryell. Then that phase left. Another phase came in. The 46 defense came in at some point. That left. Now we have, then you had the greatest show on turf. And I'm not saying these are.
Defense.
I'm not saying these are all.
No.
I'm not putting these in any type of order, but I'm saying
No.
I'm giving these as examples.
No.
And then the league either catches up.
It's a
or,
copycat league.
Yeah,
It's-
it's a really sort of. I don't want to use the word depressing, but it's really not smart. I was going to say stupid. I'll just say not smart, because we've talked about this with baseball. Everybody who plays in the major leagues is not going to have There's not going to be one guy on your team who's going to be a great closer. I mean, you might have 10 great closers in the league. The other 20-some teams are going to have to do something different, but they don't. And I think that leads to, that probably it becomes a problem because now I remember one year, I can't remember the guy's name, but it was the Kansas City Royals, had a closer, and he was really ineffective. I mean, I'm talking, when you blow 5 or 6 saves, that's one thing. This guy was like maybe 60-40.
Jeez.
And they kept trotting him out there, and I'm like, why are you doing that? I mean, bullpen by committee doesn't seem to be palatable for anybody. But if you don't have a closer, what else you got to do?
Yeah. I mean, look at everybody wondered how long LaTroy Hawkins was able to last as bad as he was.
I think he's still in the league.
He's still around.
Yeah, he's still in the league.
167 years old or something like that.
Tell you, they thought Satchel Paige was old.
This
guy
used to
be beating him pretty soon.
Used to refer to him on the air as Latrine Hawkins.
Latrine. I remember, Jim, one year it was the opening series, and I was over at a friend's house watching it. It was a Saturday afternoon, and here's a typical thing. I don't know who the manager was. It could have been Baylor or Baker or one of them. It was one of those guys. And cold, raw, a day like today. I mean, it was a day like today, upper 30s with the wind.
And the sleet.
And no sleet that day, but this day was, dry. So Maddox is pitching, and he goes like 8 1/3. And finally, I don't know if he walked the guy, gave up a hit. Probably didn't walk him, maybe gave up a hit. In a close game, like a one-run ball game. And LaTroy was not the closer, but the closer was hurt. So Hawkins is up in the bullpen, and I'm thinking, don't bring this guy in. Because what I'm thinking is Maddox at least has the advantage of he's used to the weather, and the weather is bad, right? So he's used to he's got his grip on the ball and everything. Hawkins, whether he was going good or going bad, he's getting up cold, basically. I mean, and so he takes 20, 30 warm-up pitches. Now you bring him in the game. Well, he blows the game. And I'm thinking, you could see this thing coming.
You knew it was coming.
You know it's coming
you
for
knew
sure.
It was coming.
I mean, I don't care who the guy was. The conditions just weren't good.
Right. I had to, just bringing that up made me think back when Hawkins was with the team. There was, used to post to the original Scorehead board back on listserv days way back when in the internet, and one guy whose handle was Baby Maddox, and Doug Buffone named him that once he looked at him because he looked just like Maddox. Hawkins came in and blew a game, just absolutely blew a game, and we looked at the he posted. And it was line after line after line after line of a word that I can't say because John would be on the phone with the priest. Just must have been 50 lines of it. And finished it off with blankety blank blank sigh and a big sigh. Then the next day Hawkins came in and made the day before look good.
Oh, geez.
And go to the board and look to see what's posted. And we just see a post from Eric said, see yesterday's post.
Yeah. We wandered off football onto baseball, but what I wanted to ask you, one of the things I looked through the paper real quick. I noticed that the Bulls lost again last night in Utah.
Yeah,
and it seems that especially Rick Morrissey, I don't read his column, but I read the headline of it, is starting to really. I'm wondering how long Fred Hoiberg is going to last because Morrissey is already on the bandwagon. He's picked up this thing that started with Jimmy Butler, where we're not practicing hard enough.
He's not coaching us hard enough.
He's not coaching us hard enough, and now Morrissey is saying, I think he refers to the Bulls as playing soft in today's paper. I think that's what the headline is, and I'll tell you what. I don't think it should be this way. But when you get a major voice in the media starting to play that drum, you start to hear that drum beat, other people are probably going to start to pick it up, and that's not really good news for for Fred Hoiberg.
No, and it's interesting here because I'm looking at Joe Cowley's column today, and he said it would be easy. This is today's Sun-Times. It would be easy for Fred Hoiberg to offer up some coach speak and take the blame. That's what a first-year coach would most likely do, but while Hoiberg did not hide from the responsibility when his players said they lacked discipline, neither would he take full accountability for what the players should be handling themselves.
Well, I think I think that's a good comment. But at the same time, there's only, as usual, there's only one coach and there's, I don't know, what is there, 12 players on an NBA team?
Yeah.
I just think I've read so many comments like that, Jim, where various players, Derrick Rose or Jimmy Butler, who usually are the spokespersons, or Gasol, one of those guys, will refer to the fact that, we know what we're doing, but in the game we just don't do it.
Yeah, and I mean, here's the first paragraph of Morrissey's column when he said, when Bull star Jimmy Butler called out Coach Fred Hoiberg earlier in the season for being soft, he wasn't nearly inclusive enough. He should have added the entire roster, himself included, a bunch of mellow fellows who lacked a killer instinct.
I don't know if that could. I mean, I haven't watched the Bulls enough. That wasn't Jimmy Butler's MO in the times that I've seen him.
It wasn't his MO then. But I mean, I've watched. I'm honestly, I haven't watched him that much. But when I've looked at him, this is like a. Well, five guys out on the floor who don't quite know who look like they were just introduced.
I was out with Mr. Matthews last Thursday.
Always popular and ever exciting,
yes,
Jimmy Sunshine.
Yes, and they had the Bulls game from L.A. with the Lakers on.
Yeah,
and the Bulls won that handily. But
and
I wasn't watching the game closely, but every time I looked up, it's interesting what you're saying here, because I thought to myself, even though we're handling these guys, and they should be handled, they're not good, there was actually no intensity that I could see in the game. We were beating them because they're very beatable.
Yeah.
And we're better.
Yeah.
But you know what? You got to the great thing about Tom Thibodeau, and people knocked him for this, but he made the players keep their pedal to the metal. Now, everybody said, well, what was Rose doing out there when we were the first time he hurt himself when we were up by? But you know what?
He had no business being
out. Part of the idea is maybe we're winning and maybe we're winning big, but maybe Derrick Rose, is it possible that Thibodeau wanted him to see him do something more defensively or offensively or in the passing game or whatever? I think the fact that you had a coach who, how could I put this? You keep hearing Bulls management say, we have a talented roster. I think we have a talented roster up to a certain point, but the reason that it appeared more talented than it was is because you had a coach who demanded all of those players, whatever their level of talent, to try to reach a certain level. And that's the whole difference that I'm seeing right now. I'm not knocking Fred Hoiberg. He is who he is. If I'm going to knock anybody, I'm going to knock John Paxson and Gar Forman.
Yeah. I mean, this is not a good roster. And you know what? I mean, you're going to see. I don't know if they've got anybody that they can deal Gasol to before the trading deadline, but he's going to be gone after the season. Mm-hmm. That Noah's gone, and
But then
what are you going to do?
You talk about softness in the on the team, but when you talk about trading a guy, say like Noah, who is actually a tough player. So where is the toughness going to come from then?
That's a good question. Well, the problem with Noah is going to be a free agent, so it's going to have to see what you're going to have to see what the market is.
But I would say this: I don't think the Bulls roster is untalented. I don't think it's as talented as management thinks it is.
No,
but I think I'll say this again. I think the reason they thought it was so talented is because you had a coach who was pushing his players to excel and get to a certain level.
And now you don't.
And now you don't.
And now you don't. And now it's going to be interesting. I don't know how it's going to look when Mike Dunleavy comes back. He's in the D League right now.
for conditioning and,
for conditioning,
and whatnot.
for conditioning. So they'll see what happens. Miritich, you're going to get him back after the All-Star break.
I mean, you get a little a bump from those guys, but I don't think that's the. Put it this way: the Bulls have been down men in the past, and still been able to function pretty well. I don't think it's so much the depletion by injury. I just think it's the whole, mindset of the team.
There
if
is,
you will.
yeah, I think that's the basic thing. You know, it's bad when Etuan Moore has to start.
Well, I personally like.
I
like
kind of like
Etuan
him
Moore.
too. I kind of like what he does when he comes into a ball game.
Yeah, I mean he's a good play. See, there's a thing about about professional sports. In the NBA, if you're not a first-round draft choice, then you really, really, really have to dig to get any respect, and that's the situation of a guy like Etuan Moore. But but no, he's a good player. There's I don't think there's anything wrong with Etuan Moore now. I mean, unless there's some things that are. I remember when we used to have. What was his name? Jeremy Pargo, was it?
Something like that.
Yeah, Pargo. There was a guy who would come off the bench, and he's a pro as far as a shooter goes, lights out.
Yeah.
But I would watch the games, and I'd say, okay, why doesn't this guy play more? And then if I watch him on the floor, I'd say, well, you know what? Here's a guy, not that he's slow, but he's just a half a step slow for the NBA. So he was more of a liability on defense. Now that could be the same case with Etuan Moore.
That might be the issue of Moore.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been averaging 33 minutes a game on the start of this trip. Mm-hmm. After he played 12 minutes in the 3 games leading up to it total.
Yeah. Well, they're by necessity.
By necessity,
I think they're out of guard. He's the third guard. I think.
Yeah.
They don't have any more guards.
Yeah.
Well, what happened to Brooks though? He's on the team.
Yeah, I don't know.
I have to say this. Even with Thibodeau, this happened. But when I look at the Bulls' box score and see who's playing what minutes, maybe 2 weeks ago, Aaron Brooks had a really big game against somebody. I mean, scoring wise, I think he scored 28 or something. Then he'll go 2 weeks, depending on who they play, and he's barely playing at all. So it must be matchups, and Brooks. Guys like Brooks, McDermott, some of your bench guys really fall into that category, and so I'm thinking why is this? And I don't see much difference between Hoiberg and Thibodeau on this.
Now I didn't look what happened last night, but Brooks played 16 minutes, almost 17 minutes on Sunday.
Okay,
but he only had 2 points.
2 points, yeah.
He only had 2 points.
It's an interesting thing with the Bulls. But I think you had asked me prior to the season how I thought they would do, and I said I didn't think they would do that well. And unfortunately, it looks like that's going to be the case.
They're going to wind up being a 4th seed, a 5th seed. They'll go out, and then once again, they're going to be caught in NBA draft purgatory.
Yeah.
You don't know what's going to happen. If you get anybody, if you get everyone else, if you get somebody who can put things together, and all of a sudden magic happens, you can make a run.
You can, yeah.
You had that opportunity a couple of years ago. The year Rose got hurt. And I heard an interview with, a clip from an interview with Thibodeau the other day, and he said that still kind of haunts him. That still kind of haunts him. He still kind of regrets that.
Okay.
Because he said we had the guys and we couldn't do anything. We couldn't really do anything with it.
I think realistically, though, whether Derrick Rose ever got injured or not, I think we've talked about this before too. No matter, Steph Curry obviously is a great player and is, I believe, they consider him to be a point guard, but I still don't see it as being a point guard league. And,
no, it's
and Derrick Rose certainly is not Steph Curry offensively, anyway.
Yeah.
So I just don't see where it would have evolved into a championship team. I just don't think that we have that type of talent, and part of it is like what you, is about what you say. We're in draft draft day purgatory.
You're in draft day purgatory. You're not going to come up with anything. Yeah. Do you think as I look at the standings at Golden State at 44-4, they're going to best the Bulls?
Well, I'm going to put my fan hat on and say hopefully not, but
they've still got some games against San Antonio, so there still could be losses.
Yeah.
Doctor, break us.
You're listening to Armchair Experts from the John Avila Broadcast Center on Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network on Wednesday, February the 3rd, the year of our Lord, 2016, with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro. And this is Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM Norwich, Illinois. And now, back to Jim and Rich.
There were a couple of All-Star games over the weekend.
Yeah, Jim, you must be psychic today, because I'm sitting here thinking, okay, because we obviously we didn't even have the minimal show prep that we usually have for this show.
And most of the time that's laughable.
Yeah, that's laughable anyway, and we had zero this time.
And when we do prep, half the time we forget what we were talking about.
But you turned to the page in the Sun-Times from yesterday's Sun-Times with John Scott. And
wasn't that a great
story? And a shame on the NHL for trying to put the kibosh on that whole thing. Did
you read the article he wrote in the Players Tribune?
No, I think I heard some excerpts.
You need to look it up and read the article. It's very good, and you just look at the guy and think what they were trying to do to him.
Yeah. It's to me, and the thing is, I don't. One thing I do not understand though, did Montreal bring him back up so he could participate?
No.
Or did the NHL decide to finally let their guard down and let him participate?
They let him participate. And if you noticed in the pictures, they would not let him wear, even though he was elected from Phoenix, they wouldn't let him wear a Phoenix uniform. Mm-hmm. They wouldn't let him wear a Montreal uniform. They wouldn't even let him wear a St. John's Ice Caps uniform.
Wow.
So he was put into the generic NHL All-Star uniform from when he participated in the skills competition. And actually, I had to laugh yesterday that I saw that an article after all this that the team in the AHL that he's with now, St. John's, said, well, we can't change our name, but on social media they were being known as the St. John Scott Ice Caps.
Yeah. Thanks, Jim.
And I think it's really, really a great story. It was a lot of fun to see some of these things. To see, thank you, Doctor. It was a lot of fun to see the stuff that happened. I mean, all you had to do is look at that clip on Saturday night during the skills competition when they were all being introduced, and he's standing next to Patrick Kane laughing as Kane gets booed.
Yeah.
And they introduce him, and he gets cheered.
Yeah.
And to win the MVP award, because everybody wrote him in, because the three choices they put up on the scoreboard didn't include John Scott.
Yeah, that's what I understand. Yeah,
I think it's a great story. I think it's a unbelievably good story, and to see the Twitter feed from some of the players, like Roberto Luongo said, this is the most fun I've ever had. Mm-hmm. Everybody just had a great weekend.
Yeah. What did Jaromir Jagr said? I don't like to lose, but under these circumstances, I really don't mind it, or something to that effect.
Yeah.
So
and John Scott's scoring a goal and celebrating like a guy who's
he
scored a lot more than 5 goals in his whole career.
Yeah. It was fun too when I look up and I'm watching the TV and I look up and I see all of a sudden I see Scott and Patrick Kane going around. I go, what the hell is this all about?
Both of them were
And
laughing.
then I look, they're just they're playing around.
Yeah,
So,
Kane scored, dropped the gloves, and ran.
yeah. It was a halfway decent game compared to what
Yeah.
they've had in the past, though.
Yeah, I mean, well, let's see. In the Pacific versus the Central, I was wondering how they're doing. They were playing 2 periods. Pacific beat the Central 9-6, and then in the other one, the Atlantic beat the Metropolitan 4-3. And then 1-0 because I think everyone was tired by that point.
Now, how much of the game was played 3-on-3?
The whole game, I think, was
The
supposed
whole game was
I think the whole
3-on-3?
game was supposed to be 3-on-3.
Interesting.
I think, and it was a lot of fun. I think it was a lot of fun. Okay, no, they played 2 10-minute periods, and that's how they went to a championship game.
Yeah, I was going to say with Scott being elected by the fans, then it always becomes an issue of, how much should the fans be voting on it? How much should the fans' vote count? And my thought is, if the fans want to see certain players, that's up to them.
Mm-hmm.
I can recall, I think that would have probably been in the 70s, and there was some controversy in the Major League Baseball All-Star game. A bunch of older players who were stars, who weren't having good years, were elected. I remember Brooks Robinson was one of them, and there was others. There was more than him. And the Sporting News was still around, and I read the article, and I don't remember who wrote it, but the guy made a good point. He says, "Is this team?" Put it this way. He said, the fans have every right to vote in who they want and who they want to see. In this case, they wanted to see the older stars, regardless of what type of seasons they were having.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say in the NHL's case with John Scott, some people got together. They wanted to see John Scott, the nice guy, be able to be in the game. And so what was the big problem?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and you mean to tell me that every All-Star game there's ever been, that absolutely every guy who was
Deserved
to be there? I mean, come on, give me a break.
No, that's not the case. It's certainly not the case. But to see something like this, and I saw an adorable picture, John Scott with one of his little girls wearing his jersey, and she had one of his jerseys on from one of his teams, and on the back of it had his number, but instead of his name on the top it said Daddy.
Yeah.
It's
amazing. John Scott, though, showed a lot more ability than I thought that he had. You always hear about this guy. Well, he's a fighter, but he can barely do anything else. You know what? When he had the opportunity, he didn't look that bad.
No, he had his opportunity, and it was great, and it was a lot of fun. Now, on the other hand, there was the Pro Bowl. If I can find an article about it,
Let me ask you, before you get into the Pro Bowl,
Yeah.
are Rice and Irvin the permanent captains
No.
of this team? 'Cause
No.
Irvin did it last year.
Irvin did it. Irvin did it a couple of years ago, and I thought I saw something about it. 2 years in a row.
Yeah. that's
Yeah,
what I thought.
Team Irvin versus Team Rice. Then in 15, it was Team Irvin versus Team Carter. And then the first year they started that, and then the first year they started that, it was Team Rice versus Team Sanders.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
you know,
Deion Sanders?
yeah.
Did they have any?
I think it was, it was Deion, not Barry.
Did they have any white guys who want to do this? Or is it just got to be black guys? I just wanted to find out.
We'll let we'll let that go.
You can give the disclaimer now.
Yeah. Opinions expressed. Yada yada.
Yeah.
Yeah. MASSARO.
I could just see the letters from the NAACP coming in. hot and heavy now.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. I'm sure with our massive audience.
It would be just our luck that the only people who listen are black. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. Just
Those two dudes make a lot of sense.
Yeah, we make a lot of sense. Sometimes we do.
Jim,
Sometimes
okay.
we don't. Maybe it's good that I'm taking the next couple of months. Some things will die down by the time I come back.
You forgot that Sox Fest, Jim. We had Sox Fest over the weekend.
Oh my gosh, the ever optimistic Sox fans. It's great when the optimism of January from Sox fans lasts through February.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
I'm expecting some sort of complaint from Sox fans pretty soon. I don't know what it is. I don't know what's going to happen. What do you? That's another team that's still sitting there trying to figure out who they want to be.
I definitely agree with you on that. To me, it's what's the old saying? You throw money at a problem. Well, in this case, they're throwing money or bodies or whatever at the problem. I don't know that. I'm not saying it won't, but it doesn't seem like there's a real cohesive plan there.
No. They're trying to rebuild. They're trying to rebuild on the fly over, as they say, a 3-year period.
Mm-hmm.
But there doesn't seem to be a plan.
No,
that says it's a typical Kenny Williams type rebuild. That okay, let's we got this. Let's give them all our prospects out of the farm system.
Yeah, right. The only ones who were worth anything they gave away.
Yeah. And you hear him say, well, we're really good. We're really good at developing pitchers in our farm system, but we're not really that good at developing position players. So what? Part of the deal with the Reds and the Dodgers to get Todd Frazier is to give up your best pitching prospect and give up your best position player prospect.
And they actually, those guys actually ended up going to the Dodgers.
Those wound up going to the Dodgers.
You know what I keep thinking, Jim?
Made me scratch my head. I didn't understand that one.
A guy like, let's just say, well, any of them, Montes, at least as a pitcher, if you pitch well, you have a chance to break in the rotation. But the two other guys, Thompson and Johnson, where the heck are they going to break in? I mean, how was that a great move for them? I mean, it wasn't. Micah Johnson was having trouble making it with the Dodgers. I mean, with the Sox. I just saw the Dodgers re-sign Howie Kendrick for a couple years, so that position is going to, and for big bucks, so that position is going to be taken for a while, barring injury. And the Dodgers are deep enough in the outfield that they've actually, traded away outfield talent in the past. So where's Trace Thompson going? It's really sort of a depressing trade for guys like that because you don't see where they're going to fit in where they sent them to.
I know. I saw an interesting. I was going to save this to the end, but I got a kick. I got a kick out of this article.
I get no kick
from champagne. It kind of explained the whole issue of team movements and transfers.
Oh, you're talking about
I'm talking about
franchise,
especially all the uproar in St. Louis after the Rams moved from St. Louis and back to Los Angeles. But there is really only one city in the history of all these franchise moves that can complain.
They were the same team as been.
Well,
in that
I'll
city
just
forever.
I'll just tell you what it is. Let's go this. This was Steve Rushin's article in Sports Illustrated. When you consider that Los Angeles stole the Rams from St. Louis, which had previously stolen them from Los Angeles, which had long before stolen them from Cleveland, whose NHL Barons had been the California Golden Seals before Cleveland stole them from Oakland, whose Raiders were stolen by and then stolen back from Los Angeles, which is the city that stole the Dodgers from Brooklyn, then you can hardly blame Brooklyn for swiping the Nets, which the borough stole from New Jersey, which had stolen them from Long Island, which had stolen them previously from their original home in New Jersey, a state that would steal the Jets and the Giants away from New York, while also stealing the Hockey Devils from Denver, whose NHL Colorado Rockies were called the Scouts before Denver stole them from Kansas City, which had already stolen the Athletics from Philadelphia before those A's were stolen again, this time by Oakland, which also stole the Warriors from San Francisco, the city that previously stole them from Philadelphia, and also stole the baseball Giants from Manhattan, which the Dutch stole from the Lenape Indians, original residents of New York, which also stole the Yankees, the Highlanders from Baltimore, which stole the Cleveland Browns, rebranded the Ravens after Indianapolis had stolen their Colts, a team that itself had risen from the still warm corpse of the Texans of Dallas, a city that paid it forward by stealing the hockey's North Stars from Minnesota, a state that had already stolen the Twins from Washington when they were the Senators, a city in turn stole the basketball's Bullets, now the Wizards, from Baltimore, which had previously stolen them from Chicago when they were called the Zephyrs, the same Chicago that saw its football Cardinals stolen by St. Louis, which would in turn see them stolen by Arizona, necessitating the theft by St. Louis of the Rams from Los Angeles, which is no city of angels because Los Angeles also stole the Clippers from San Diego, which had stolen them from Buffalo, when they were known as the Braves, just like the baseball team in Boston that now plays in Atlanta, which stole them from Milwaukee. That same Milwaukee that after robbing Boston of the Braves and being robbed of them by Atlanta had the good sense to steal the Pilots, rebranded the Brewers from Seattle, whose basketball Sonics were later stolen by Oklahoma City and renamed the Thunder, which is why Seattle has tried and failed to steal the Kings from Sacramento, even though Sacramento had already stolen that team fair and square from Kansas City, which had renamed them the Kings after stealing them from Cincinnati, where they were the Royals, a team Cincinnati had stolen from Rochester, whose NBA-loving citizens could still drive a modest distance to watch the rival Syracuse Nationals, or might have been able to if the Nats hadn't been stolen away and turned into the 76ers by Philadelphia, whose professional lacrosse team, I didn't even know they had one. The Wings now ply their trade as the New England Black Wolves of Connecticut, a tiny state whose Hartford Whalers were stolen by Raleigh and became the NHL's Carolina Hurricanes, whose home state in turn had its NBA Hornets, stolen by New Orleans, whose Jazz had been stolen by Utah, whose NBA Stars were stolen by San Antonio, which has been trying for years to steal the Raiders from our old friends in Oakland, who may yet see their Raiders stolen instead by Los Angeles, which also stole the Lakers from Minneapolis and still might steal the Chargers from San Diego to complement the Rams, newly stolen from St. Louis, whose baseball Browns had been stolen by Baltimore, they're now the Orioles, but whose St. Louis football Cardinals had been stolen, you recall, from Chicago, an otherwise blameless city that only ever stole its current NFL team, the Bears, who were formerly the Staleys before being lifted from Central Illinois, a state whose people never stole anything if you don't count half their governors, which is why the city you should really feel sorry for in this whole NFL to L.A. debacle is Decatur, Illinois, the pride of the prairie, the soybean capital of the world, former home of the Decatur Staleys, and the only American hamlet that can truly say without fear of contradiction, we was robbed.
I love it. That is one of the best articles I ever heard in my life. Oh, my goodness.
And we didn't even get how Denver wound up with the Avalanche, because that was,
Well, it's a great that's a great roundup.
Isn't that incredible?
It's that, Jim. Once in a while, if I have trouble going to sleep, I start going over the franchises and where they've been and where And you're right. I mean, everything is. When you said, I'll just pick out the what are they now? The Brooklyn Nets. I mean, when they first started, they were the New Jersey Nets with Dr. J and the ABA. Right. Then they went to I think they were the New York Nets.
They were the New York Nets.
They were in Long Island,
right.
I guess. Then they became the now they're the Brooklyn Nets. So I probably skipped over something that they were prior to that. But I mean, even within a pretty good. Pretty small geographical radius, there was changes.
Sure.
And, who was it? Didn't the Islanders just build a new stadium? Or they're in the
No, they're
process of
playing.
building one?
They're playing in that, or I think they're playing in the arena in Brooklyn now.
They are. But
Yeah.
that's a new. But that is because Nassau Coliseum is either being rehabbed or they're going to get a new stadium.
I don't know what the deal was. I just, there was all the sentiment when they were leaving.
I got to ask you.
I just remember at one point in time in New York, back in the days of World Team Tennis, there was the Sets, there was the Nets,
the Jets,
the Mets.
Yeah. I was going to ask you. You had mentioned. Was it you? Did you say Utah? The Utah Stars are now the San Antonio Spurs.
No. The WNBA Stars are in San Antonio now.
Okay.
The Spurs have always been the Spurs.
Okay, I was going to say I wasn't aware of that happen. I'm not saying it didn't happen, but I wasn't aware of it happening.
No, it's the WNBA team, the Utah Stars, which I guess are now in San Antonio.
What happened to the Virginia Squires?
Good question. Good question. They've just gone.
Or how about the Memphis Showboats or whatever they were?
Memphis and what was the St. Louis team in the ABA?
Oh, I was talking about the Memphis team and the
WNBA?
No, not WNBA. I was talking about the one in the what was the Pro Football League? The WFL?
Oh, jeez.
Well, if you start throwing in leagues that no longer exist, you really start to come up with a list that's unbelievable.
I'm still waiting for the XFL reunion game.
One of my favorite things is when the Canadian Football League expanded into the United States.
Played in Baltimore.
And they played in Baltimore. I believe they might have played in Vegas. I think they played in San Antonio.
Mm-hmm.
And there might have been one other city, but there was probably four. That would be no. You know what? For them,
Buffalo?
it would make sense to have three, because I think they usually have 9 teams.
Oh, okay.
So
all right, I didn't remember.
Yeah, but it's that's one of the best articles that I've ever heard or heard about. That's just excellent.
That just covers everything.
It does.
And when you really get down to it, the only city in this country that has a right to complain is Decatur, Illinois.
And what was the author's name, Jim?
Steve Rushin.
Boy, I'll tell you.
That's
one heck of an
article. He writes the point after. A lot of the point after in the Sports Illustrated. And actually, there was a Twitter discussion. I didn't go and look at it, but he posted a question: which sports franchise move should be undone? Join the discussion on Twitter by using hashtag #SIPointAfter and following @Steve Rushin.
Jim, let me ask you a question. Which, if you had to say, and I understand that we don't know every high school basketball program in the country, but there are some prominent ones that we know from other states. If you had to say which high school basketball program has eventually sent the most NBA players into the league, who would you say that was?
Probably one of the New York City schools, I would guess.
You're close. It's east. It's east. So.
Washington DeMatha.
Yeah, that would have been what I would have thought.
Mm-hmm.
But believe it or not, it's Wilt Chamberlain's former
Overbrook?
high school Overbrook. Has sent
really?
12 players to the NBA.
Oh gosh, I didn't even. I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah, interesting. What made me think of it is I'm thinking of. I think I texted you about Bobby Wanzer.
Right.
And then Kenny Sailors died the other day.
The inventor of the jump shot.
Yeah, I don't know if he's the inventor of the jump shot,
well, at
but
least he's
possible.
claimed it. They claim he's the inventor of it.
I got a kick out of it when they inducted him into the Naismith Hall of Fame, which is he died at 90 something, so he would have been in his 80s when he was inducted. Yeah. And I loved his comment. He says, "I'm the best looking guy here," and he says, "I got the best shot."
There you go.
So
there you go.
But those are now talk
that's
about
like,
the.
That's a great line. That's like Rickles getting up at a celebrity event and walking to the mic, and the first thing he says is, "I'm the biggest name here."
I love. I would have. What I remember about the first thing I remember about the NBA, Jim, was I think my dad used to bring home the Street and Smiths books, so I would get the. Never the pro football, but the college football Street and Smiths. And then college basketball, I would think was probably still bigger than college or than pro basketball. I'm talking about the late 50s.
Late 50s, yeah.
He would bring
You
home
really-
that street and Smith's book. But in the pro part of it, the guy that for some reason, and I think it was just because he was like bald as a cue ball, but a great player, that always stood out to me was George Yardley. I'd look at his picture and I'd be like, even as a young kid, which I was at the time, how the heck, this guy doesn't look like an athlete at all. But he was the first guy, I think, in the NBA to score over 2,000 points in a season, if I'm not mistaken.
Might
Pretty
have
sure
been.
he is.
Might have been.
And,
For the
for
Fort
the
Wayne Zollner Pistons.
Yes, well, yeah, he made it to Detroit as well.
Yes, I know he made it to Detroit. But
Yeah.
I remember starting to watch the NBA. If my dad turned it on the weekends, it was probably some of those Sunday games, and usually it was the Celtics and
It was Russell versus Wilt,
Russell versus Wilt,
you know.
and
Or else maybe you get the Royals because they had the big O, Oscar Robertson.
yeah, and Jack Twyman. My dad loved Oscar Robertson. He thought he was great.
Well, you know, Oscar. They say, Jim, that Oscar and I think this is when they started keeping these stats, or else they went back and got them. But I believe Oscar Robertson is the only NBA player to ever average a triple-double for a season. And I don't know, can't tell you what year it was, but he, I believe, is the only one.
I thought. No, let's see. Didn't Wilt? No, Wilt had that.
No, Wilt, no.
No, Wilt had the led the league in points and rebounds.
Yeah.
Average.
Yeah. I'll tell you, I'm reading, the only reason I brought the Wilt thing up is I'm reading a Wilt biography, and interesting, Wilt was, I'll tell you what, I admire Wilt Chamberlain a lot. He was not only a real competitive guy, but he was sort of a down-to-earth guy. But they talked about in the, I don't know if it was been 1957 when Kansas played North Carolina for the national championship, and a short, 5'11" even for that time was short. Tommy Kearns for North Carolina sort of did Kansas in a 3 overtime national championship game. And years later, Tommy Kearns was ill, terminally ill, and I believe it was Tommy Kearns. And Wilt, I can't recreate the letter in any shape or form for you that he wrote to Tommy Kearns, but it was just a moving thing, and just a nice gesture by a guy who really had nothing to gain from that at all. But and that was sort of typical of Wilt. He was sort of a people guy.
Yeah.
And just seemed like a real good man. So.
It just made me think of, I think in his first book that he wrote when he talked about coming into the NBA after playing a year with the Lakers, not with the Lakers, with the Globetrotters.
With the Trotters, yeah.
And, the Globetrotters bits were always referred to as the Reams.
Mm-hmm. Reams, right.
Right,
Right.
And he said it was hard to get out of some of that habit with some of those. And he said he was in a game, and he came into the lane, and I can't remember who the referee was, but it was one of the old-time refs who was on the chubby side. I can't remember who it was that he told the story. But Wilt got whistled for charging.
Mm-hmm.
And he turned around and yelled at the ref. He says, "What did you say?" He says, "Charging." "What did you say?" "Charging." He says, and with that, I went over and picked him up and held him right to my face, and I said, "What did you say now?" And he went, "Blocking."
Well, they say, you know what, they said that one of the reams that they talk about is that, Meadowlark was the center, even when Wilt was there.
Right.
So Wilt was a guard,
Right.
basically.
Yeah, 7-foot guard.
And they said one of the routines they did is that at some point Meadowlark would collide with another player and he'd be laying on the court injured. And Meadowlark said, Wilt would come over and he would pick me up and like a baby. And he said, I weighed 200 and some pounds. He said, and this man was enormously strong. And I know you're looking at the clock. I was going to say the one last thing I wanted to say.
John will just give us the.
We got Frankie D waiting here to do his show, though.
All right, so we got to get out.
But I was going to say, my son used to say to me, The old time guys, in the NBA, the centers and whatnot, they couldn't even compete. Wilt Chamberlain was so fast that they said that you name whatever offense or defense that you wanted to name, that he could have played any of those easily. But I would say that to Tom, I go, well, to me, Yao Ming or Sabonis or whoever you would consider a big center today, even Shaq when he was playing, Wilt Chamberlain would eat those guys for lunch.
Absolutely.
I mean, he played against guys who were phenomenal players themselves, and obviously was dominant. So,
all right. Well, we came up. We once again, for two guys who haven't figured out what the heck they were going to talk about, managed to kill an hour.
Yeah, that last 15 minutes went real fast.
I know. All right. Time for us to clear out. It's going to be my last go around here for a while as I take a little tax season hiatus, and we'll pick up again in April. We'll operate in the missing armchair expert formation for any show that Mr. Massaro would like to do.
Yeah, in fact, I think, John, I'm going to be in touch with you because I know Mark Bruno wanted to be on the show, so maybe we'll do that.
Talk a little old time Ridgewood football.
Yeah,
kind of a carryover when we had Al Marks here a couple of months back.
Yeah, that was fun. That was
a fun show, and I know Mark was one of the first ones that when I posted the picture of Al on Facebook and on the Ridgewood page, Mark was one of the first people to ask for a link to the program.
That would be right.
And that didn't surprise me.
Yep,
didn't surprise me.
Not at all.
But no, I'm I'm running into tax season conflicts, so I'm gonna take a break until sometime after April 15th, and Mr. Massaro can fly solo for whenever he wants to come in and yammer away for an hour.
Sure. I can do a lot of yammering in an hour.
He knows how to yammer. He's one of the best yammerers I know. So in the meantime, thank you, Dr. DeVita, for the spinning the dials. And
you are welcome, Jim. You're a great guy. You're a great friend.
Oh, hey, I ain't dead yet. I'm coming back. We'll see. All right. Well, we're going to get out of here. Thanks for everything. Thanks for listening. And we are Taillights.
You have been listening to Armchair Experts from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on Wednesday, February the 3rd, year of our Lord, 2016, on Jack FM 89.7, WRHS FM Norwich, and the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network, with the WRHS FM sports announcers, Jim Leon and Rich Massaro. This broadcast was directed by John DeVita, and special thanks to radio station manager Kevin Zeflik of WRHS-FM Norwich, and the executive producer of Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network, Mr. John Seconda. This broadcast was pre-recorded on Tuesday, February the 2nd, the year 2016. Until next time, please be safe and thanks for listening. And this is Jack FM 89.7 WRHS FM, Norwich, Illinois.